the reason that the Japanese commander decides to attack across that sandbar is because of this guy named Jacob Vouza. Now there's like the popular story for Jacob Vouza, which has proven to be not necessarily what happened. And then there's like the actual story that happened, which the actual story to me is freaking just as cool as the story that's, built into this myth. I'll tell both and let you guys decide, what you think is the cooler story. But the not true version, right? The version that became popular, but not necessarily the true version, is that Jacob Vouza, again, he's a scout. He's a coastal scout, and he is going to this Guadalcanal village, and it's nighttime. And as he's walking into the village, he doesn't realize that the Japanese soldiers that are making their way towards Alligator Creek have occupied this village. And by the time he realizes it, when he gets into the village, it's too late. They take him prisoner, and they find an American flag on him, and start trying to interrogate him and get where's the enemy at, where's this and that and the other, and all this stuff.
Yeah.
And he refuses to talk. He's not going to talk. Now the popular story, the one that's not necessarily true, goes like this. Once they've captured him and find that flag and realize that with their interrogating him, he's not going to give up any answers, they tie him to a tree. They start stabbing him with bayonets, and he still refuses to tell. And so they end up slitting his throat and leaving him there to die. And somehow Jacob Vouza comes to and is able to get out of his restraint on the tree. He bites through the restraints on his wrists and makes it back to the American lines to warn them that the Japanese are coming.
This is the true story, or
this is the not so true story.
Okay.
There are elements of it that are true,
yeah,
right? But this is what became popular after the fact.
Okay.
The real story is far more interesting because, truthfully, the Americans already knew they were coming, right? That because of this reconnaissance patrol that had happened the day before, they knew there was a Japanese element coming. That's why they're shoring up their defensive lines in that sector of the defenses. So the real story starts out the same. Jacob Vouza going into this village at nighttime, doesn't realize the Japanese have taken control. And to his, misfortune, he gets too far into the village before he realizes it, and they capture him. They do find an American flag on him, and they do begin to start interrogating him.
Mm-hmm.
And he refuses to talk at first. So all of this is true. What happens is they start stabbing him with the bayonets and stuff,
Jeez,
right?
man.
They start beating him up, hitting him with the butt of the rifle. And at that point, Jacob Vouza does talk. But here's the thing. The Japanese are looking at Jacob Vouza like he is this dumb local, right? Like he doesn't have the mental capacity to pull one over on them, right? Like he's just some dumb local. But Jacob Vouza knows exactly where the Americans are. He knows where they're weakest and where their lines are strongest. And Jacob Vouza looks at the Japanese guy and goes, wait. I will tell you where they are. Not only that, I'll tell you where their line is the weakest. So you can attack that place. What he ends up actually doing is telling them where the line is the strongest and where the Japanese are going to have the hardest time attacking, which is the sandbar.
So that's how they got the plan to go
Right.
up to the sandbar there.
And now Jacob Vouza does eventually make it back to friendly lines. They have to give him a blood transfusion there on the island to keep him alive because of his wounds. I guess and I guess there's a lot of Americans that show up, to give blood to help keep him alive.
Yeah.
He is made an honorary Marine, United States Marine. He loves the Marine Corps. He's actually buried in Marine Corps dress blues later in his life when he passes away.
No
he
kidding.
loves the Marine Corps that
Special.
much, and just an incredible guy. He goes on throughout the rest of the Pacific War to help the Allies and help Marines on different islands, especially throughout their fight in the Solomon Islands. But he's a super fascinating character. And personally, I think the real story is more interesting than the fantasy story, the one that kind of became popular. Granted, he wasn't cut, he didn't have his throat slit and do all this, but he does manage to escape, right? And before doing that, sends this entire Japanese force basically to their death by telling them where the line is the strongest, not the weakest, right?
Sends them to their death.
So it was super interesting. I had to point that out.
Yeah, I'm glad you did, because it's little things. Well, it's a big thing, but it's also just something that happens in a certain moment and can change or play a big role in other things. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this clip from America Fog of War, catch the rest of the episode here.